Okay, let's see. Underpowered sub, no synergy, Can they make any good kit? Wait, torpedo and tenta missiles? Well, damn. That's one of the best subs in the game, allowing you to locate enemies as well as force them to stop firing at you or take damage. And tenta missiles are still very effective, even if their output was nerfed heavily. Why, this must be the face of the meta. Well, never mind. Gimmicks, a term changed so much at this point, most people forget pretty much any selling point could be considered one. Long range, 2-shot kill, good paint. These are all gimmicks. Honestly, the only time a weapon is even said to have a gimmick nowadays is when it's shit. So what's my loose definition for this video? Well, I'll just go with any stat or mechanic that isn't generally changed on the weapon class. Just having different damage isn't enough. Almost every weapon does a different amount of damage compared to the others. Something like Nautilus having a charge hold is a gimmick, however, because it's an entire new mechanic for the class. Now, who's ready to bring up the intro gun? El Gber, also known as the bad one. And I have to say, it's not that bad. I mean, it's still a long-range insta-kill. Obviously, you can get shit done with it. It's only really considered bad because none of its features really matter. Gber has a long charge hold, can hold a partial charge, and can one-shot with a partial charge. And well, none of those are that big of a deal. Now don't get me wrong, charge holds are very useful. They can help you reposition around the map and can save you up close. But you don't need to hold that long. Generally, you can get by with those shorter windows, and if you need to cross a long distance while holding your charge, just pop in and out to reset the timer. You can hold partial charges, but honestly, I mostly see this as a way to hold partial one-shot charges. Oh yeah, partial charges. Now this sounds busted at first, so let's compare this to the partial charges that were busted. In Splatoon 1 with damage up, chargers could cross the threshold for a one-shot before being fully charged. But this was busted because it wasn't intended. E-liter is balanced around its charge time, so let's just reduce that. What's the worst that could happen? This is broken because the weapon wasn't balanced around it. Gber was. It's essentially just its charge time with a little bonus wheel. Gber is just a strange case of what Nintendo thought was overpowered at the time. I mean, it's still pretty fun. The big Swig can roll. I did not see a single person actually notice this thing had a wider paint trail when it was first shown off. That is not a good sign. You know, rollers have always been kinda shit at painting. It makes sense that Nintendo would eventually try to make one that's actually good at it. But we're not talking about the big paint splatter. No, every roller has different ranges and by extension, different paint. Let's talk about... Man, they named the class after this and it's garbage. Okay, you roll with Big Swig. It's good for covering the small areas fast, but that's what you do with every roll. It's not like this wider trail just made rolling viable. Hell, Big Swig's roll is arguably worse. You can't one-shot with a roll now, which makes it less optimal. It's not even a carbon situation where you have a quick one-shot up close. And considering that you can paint using horizontal flicks, yeah. When the flick does the job better, the wider paint just ends up being a nothing stat. Man, chargers just can't win. Scopes, aren't they incredible? Most sniper rifles couldn't function without them. After all, what's the point of a long-ranged weapon if you can't even see where you're aiming? Well, you can see where you're aiming. Chargers do not have that absurd range, and you don't need to hit the enemy's head, so no scopes are pretty viable. But that doesn't mean we don't have scopes. Both the Splat Charger and E-liter have variants with slightly more range, scope, and no charge hold. Listen, I said Gber focusing on charge was a bad thing, but remember, charge holds are good but you really don't need any buffs to it. And scope chargers emphasize this point by just removing them. It's not the end of the world, but it kinda hurts. A scope just means you are dedicating yourself to long-range combat, as without charge holds and the tunnel vision of the scope, it is very hard to land shots up close. Scopes limit your movement and vision too much in a game where you're gonna need to be moving constantly and looking out for attackers. So, what's the takeaway? Well, everything is a gimmick. I want you to understand that. But also, when choosing a gimmick for something you're making, at least think. What would make this gimmick appealing? And would it even work in practice? But also, there is no message. I just wanted to make fun of the GooTuber.